Hey, Barry.
Hey, great job again. The right person at the right time, as I said last year. Here's my question for you, Brandon. I'm struggling a little bit in understanding. If the standard that is written is a reflection of the current standard of care, written by qualified people in the industry, and in the disclaimer, we also have a statement: users of the X standard must keep abreast of the rapid developments in the field of water damage restoration, implement changes in technology and procedures as appropriate. You have an open proposal phase that if a concept we feel needs to come in, it's not a current standard of care practice, but with things such as COVID, H5N1, and things such as that. How does a new concept get in? If the standard reflects, well, I'm struggling, as you can see. I don't even have my thoughts organized in my head. But best practice, state of the art, is not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about there's something, let's say, that's missing in a multiple set of standards. The way we view cleaning, for instance, and how we define when something is clean. Is it visually clean, or is it clean to the microscopic level, which we're currently dealing with disease right now? And I don't see that our standards reflect that. And we now have new standards related to health in the work that we do. So my question, I guess, is it through the open proposal phase that needs to go to the committee? And when I say to the committee, to actually you, and in the case of S500, you and Chris, you look at it, you make a decision, yes, we think it holds weight, let's go in and we'll discuss it. If it doesn't, then good try, we'll see you in 5 years. Is that the way this works? I just need to know.
Yep, great question, Barry, great question. So I'm actually going to back up a little bit further in the process to answer that question. So first, as I know you're intimately aware, more aware probably even than I, with your history being standards chair and how long you've been involved in standards. The process begins, quite honestly, in revision the day a standard is published, right? Because the day that it's published, time's going to roll forward, and the industry is going to continue to change. Technology is going to continue to change, and even the standard itself, the way that it was developed, is going to get pressure tested, truly pressure tested for the first time. Public comment is kind of a pressure test, but not nearly the pressure test that a standard is going to get the first time it appears as a source document in court, right? Or the first time it appears to argue payment on a particular project. So the moment that standard publishes, in my mind, that's when the real process for revision begins. And what should be happening at that point in time is professionals and experts and subject matter experts and stakeholders of that standard should be taking note of, what do I like about the standard, what don't I like about the standard, right? And if there are some things I really don't like about this standard, how do I make a difference and how do I make a change? I fill out an application to get involved with a consensus body, because the next time this thing's going to get revised, I want to participate and get it right? So that, to me, that's kind of the first step. The second step is when the consensus body is actually formed, and then we open up these discussions within the consensus body and say, what is your experience with the standard? Where is it working? Where is it not working? What needs to be changed? And that's that open comment or proposal period that I am suggesting occur within that consensus body. Those individuals that are on that consensus body were all placed there to be that council, right? To be that board that is going to have those discussions about what really needs to change, right? And what needs to change in the standard to bring it up to speed, to bring it current, to document what truly is standard of care today, to fix any issues that were in the standard in its last publication, if there were any, et cetera, et cetera. So that open period is a period where kind of the pressure testing of the last 5 years all gets brought up within that consensus body so that those items can be addressed. Now, if there's a major issue in the standard, a significant issue in the industry that's not addressed by the standard, and that consensus body is not aware of it, then I think we missed the mark on forming the consensus body. Because that consensus body should be aware of it. These are the subject matter experts that have been, involved in the industry. They've been participating in industry, and it's not to say that something could come from the outside of that consensus body. If you find that I didn't get selected to be on the consensus body for whatever reason, one reason or another, but I have a major issue that needs to be addressed, it's not to say that that couldn't inform what's being proposed in that consensus body. And that's a great point. Barry, that I think is something that we could take a look at in that process that says, hey, there may be outside proposals that need to come into this in this revision cycle that the consensus body should hear and consider and understand. But even if they're not addressed in the open proposal process, those views will get caught by the final backstop, which is the public comment period, right? Which is the last place that we want to address any major issues, but it is that backstop that ensures that if it gets missed by the consensus body, the consensus body doesn't get informed from the outside during the development or review, then that final backstop to ensure that it gets captured is going to be in that public comment period. So hopefully that addresses it, Barry. It's a very good question, and one thing that I have not considered in process is there a way in which we want to capture outside proposals in that open proposal period? Thank you for the question, Barry.
Thank you, Brandon. I think the next question we have is Tom on the other side of the room.
You're next, Chris.
Thanks, Brandon, for your information. The structure that you're providing to me has a lot of value, especially when things go on for many years and CB members come and go. The documentation of why language was changed to understand and be able to remember is just excellent. These forms that you showed this morning, are they going to be part of a protocol, or is this just your idea? Is this going to be the format going forward? Are we going to have a package provided to the chair and vice chair to start with? Just wondering, where do we take it from here, or with what you suggested this morning?
Perfect. Yeah, so what I'm sharing with you today has all been documented. These forms are ready for consensus body use. Millie, I don't know whether or not they've just been shared out to newly formed consensus bodies, or if there's a standard place that the process and the forms have been shared through Workspace as a whole.
Yeah, Brandon, I can answer that. Tom, for all of the newer CDs that are coming together to revise a standard, these forms are being made available along with training on how to go through that process of revising their standards, and we currently have two of our newer consensus bodies, the S100 and the S220, that are already following that process. It is kind of new, and so as your committee, as your standard comes into that revision process, some of you are finishing the drafting of your first editions, so this is what you get to look forward to. Any other questions, Chris? Okay, go ahead.
G'day, Brandon. Chris Kissing. Thanks for that bit of a chat there. I've got a question. I'm on a part of the S320 committee developing a new standard, and I've sort of, being a new committee member as well over the last couple of years, I struggle with the whole process of developing a new standard, and we sort of follow one thing and then it changes and so on and so forth. So one thing I'm struggling with is at the moment we keep pulling out things because there's no standard language or no objective. And I want to know, is it valuable to input information into the standard that can sometimes be prescriptive information? And when I relate to that, I'm more talking about, because we do cleaning, writing in a standard, how do we clean? What does it mean? Like, the differences between the the actions that we do to achieve a goal?
Great question, Chris. And probably one of the most age-old questions of standard development, quite honestly. This is one of the most foundational questions, is what should the standard contain, right? Is the standard only trigger words? Is the standard trigger words and some additional supporting information? Is the standard's trigger words, supporting information, and instructional information that stands up how that is achieved? So it's an age-old question of standards, and one that every consensus body struggles with, every single one of them. So that's the first comment I want to make, Chris, is you're not alone. The 320 is not alone. This is a challenge. So having said that, I'm going to give you two answers. The first answer is that the standard should, to the degree possible, be limited to what is standard of care language, as much as possible. The more we refine a standard to being statements of procedure that are standard of care, right, that are common among reasonably prudent members of the trade and are necessary in order to develop a particular quality of work that is expected as an outcome. The more we limit to that, the more applicable the standard is, the more applied it will be, and the easier it is for somebody to use that as a standard operating procedure. The more language we add to a standard to explain it, to educate, and to teach, the more value the standard has as a teaching tool, right? But the more we distract from what is standard of care, and the more difficult it is to develop the standard, because there's more copy, to revise the standard, because there's more copy, to distribute the standard, because there's more copy, right? And the more we put on our volunteers for review and revision when they have to review and revise the standard. So my encouragement is that first and foremost, remember pillar number one. Pillar number one is consensus, right? So if your group has consensus that that standard cannot be applied without this additional informative information, it is critical because it stands up what is meant by a term. And if this is not understood, then this particular trigger statement is not understood, then you have consensus that you're going to include it, you include it, right? So you have consensus on that and you decide. Having said that, myself, and Millie and Darren and David and Cheryl, we will always encourage the consensus body to ask themselves the question, is this additional content really necessary? Or am I trying to teach a process, right? And is this becoming a teaching document? And if you're starting to cross that line, at least put the pressure back against yourself and ask yourself, is it really necessary, right? Is it really necessary to have this additional content? Could I perform this standard of care procedure if I did not also have this information available for me to understand the sentence, right? So I will always push back on that, just to try to keep us to the standard of care as much as we possibly can. Now, the last statement that I'll make on that is that there's another method to consider when you're reviewing content and you've got a procedure that the consensus body feels is necessary to understand other language within the document. Ask yourself, well, if what we're writing here is additional steps in the procedure, and if these additional steps, if they're not followed, mean that the primary step also cannot be accomplished, then maybe these additional steps and information are also, to some degree, standard of care. Either they're consequences, they're permissive steps to accomplish that task, or they're recommendations on way to accomplish that task. And if those types of questions are all yielding yeses, then that additional content is a may, a can, or a recommend, right? And maybe we're missing, in some cases, what we're missing is we're missing the triggers in some of that additional language, and not necessarily the fact that the language in and of itself is not necessary. So a couple different ways to approach that. First, consensus is key, right? If you have consensus that content must be there, then it must be there. That rules all. Secondarily, you're always going to get pressure from those outside of your consensus body that are trying to help guide the process. Limit to standard of care wherever possible, okay? But third, consider that additional language and ask yourself, is it procedural? And if it is procedural, do those steps, do you want to give permission to use those steps? Do you want to recommend those steps because they're more reliable? Or are they potential outcomes that you want to make sure the reader is aware of, right? May, can, and recommend. So hopefully that helps a little bit, Chris. But I will admit that is a perpetual challenge in standards development. Millie, back to you.
Thank you, Brandon. Our next question is from Dave Mason.
Good morning, Brandon.
Good morning, Dave.
I would like for you to explain to us what the attributes of success mean to you and your advice as to should one work from the attributes of success when writing a standard, or should we work towards the attributes of success?
There's a lot to unpack in that question, Dave.
Thank you.
So my personal belief is that we will work towards those attributes for success, right? If we can't become frozen in the process, and if I get some feedback now a little bit on the line, by the way. But we have to work towards those attributes for success. My only area where I would not compromise with that, Dave, is that we have essential requirements from ANSI, and those essential requirements from ANSI aren't attributes for success that we work towards. Those are attributes for success that must be maintained, right? Consensus, lack of dominance, right? These are things that must be a part of everything that we do as a consensus body, right? Now, precision in our content, documentation of the why, the what, and the when, the harmonization between standards, these are the points of success that we're going to work towards. And the more we work towards them, the more productive our standards will be, the more beneficial our standards will be. So addressing that from a procedural standpoint, from a standard standpoint, Dave, that's the way that I would address that question. On the other side of that, just as individual volunteers, I would put a slightly different set of pillars down that drive that success. And I would say that approach every conversation in a consensus body with an open mind, that you have to understand as standards volunteers, we all perceive ourselves as subject matter experts. Our opinions have been tried and tested and proven to ourselves over numbers of years in industry, in the applications that we've applied them in. And we're in a room of other people who have that same experience, and their outcome may be slightly different. So we have to approach all of those conversations with an open mind and understand that at the end of the day, we have to have something that a very old colleague of mine once said is called UAS. Understand, accept, and support, which doesn't necessarily mean agree, right? We need to understand the opinions of everybody else within the consensus body. We need to get to a point where we can support the outcome of that decision, but that doesn't necessarily mean that we agree, but we have come to a place where we can support it because it is technically accurate, and it will allow for an individual to operate in the standard of care, even though it may be different than the precise way in which we would document it. So from a success, working towards success, and an attribute for success individually, I would just encourage that all of us approach those conversations in a consensus body, understanding that consensus is the key. It's not the opinion of an individual, it's consensus. And that UAS model is something that I always carry into those conversations. So hopefully that answers that, Dave. I'm not sure if I hit the question scored up for you.
Dave has a follow-up, coming right up.
Yesterday, when I heard the term attributes for success, as a CB member involved in writing the standards, I understand the definition that you're giving it as far as the outline of the process. But from a standard writing standpoint, to me, and you tell me if I'm right or wrong, attributes of success of a project or a process are what we are trying to put together to have a standard, the attributes of success, not the processes of this work.
Yeah.
that leads to a success. Now, am I right about that? Give me your honest opinion on that.
No, absolutely, absolutely, Dave. I think I better understand your question.
And I think, when a CB writes a section, I think every section that we write, we have to ask ourselves, is this describing what the attribute of success or what a proper job looks like, or are we describing how you do it?
Yeah.
I don't personally think how you do it has any place in a standard. You agree with that?
So it's a good question, Dave, and my answer is going to be it depends. It depends. There are practices and procedures or procedural methodologies, right, that are important to include in standards, right? And you could refer back to even regulatory requirements in OSHA and things like that. There are many procedures that OSHA will dictate that are the how you do it, where the attribute for success is a safe work environment, right? Where we don't have injury, nobody gets hurt, right? That's the attribute for success. But there are procedures that need to be there in order to achieve that. So I think it's a combination of both, and it's the consensus body that needs to make the determination on whether or not the attribute for success is enough in and of itself. What is the deliverable? Or are there procedures that are necessary that are common among reasonably prudent members of the trade to achieve that attribute that are also necessary within the standard? So it depends, and what I'll revert to is that our consensus bodies need to make that determination for their particular area of expertise, argue that determination with their consensus body, then ultimately vote that content, right, and have consensus on what needs to be in that standard.
Thank you, Brandon. Any more questions in the room? Okay, and then also I wonder if we have any questions online. We'll check on that. And Rebecca has a question.
Hi Brandon, this is Rebecca, also from the 320. So this is a standard that is pulling from a lot of existing standards. The S500, the S540, the S520, all of these contain in them right now standard language for the care and processing of contents. And some of these standards have language that is a little bit more on the prescriptive side than we're going at this point. So how would you suggest, keeping that in mind, being able to kind of keep that harmonization, through that process?
Yeah, it's a great question, Rebecca. So my advice in that process, keeping in light with harmonization and the goal of harmonization, is that it's okay as the 320 consensus body to review content from, let's say, the 500 and determine there's too much information here. To Dave's point, there's too much information here that is prescriptive that really doesn't relate to what it is that the technician is setting out to accomplish. It's not necessary, and not include that information, because what is necessary in order to achieve the standard of care is really just this first part of that information. Because you're the experts in that contents restoration and cleaning, and you're documenting what is necessary for an individual to accomplish that work successfully, that end product. Having said that, where I would encourage pause is not when you're deciding not to include certain amounts of information, but if what you're deciding is that the information in another standard conflicts what you as a group have determined is necessary, right? In other words, you've decided that it is standard of care to use X, and the S500 says it's standard of care to do Y. Two entirely different things that are in conflict with one another. That's where, as a group, that I would encourage that there be some outreach to that particular consensus body and say, hey, we have an area of conflict here potentially. Let's discuss this and see if there's a way that we can harmonize this. But exclusion of some content, I would not say is a lack of harmonization or a conflict between those documents. If it's exclusion of content because the other standard just goes too deep, right? And you've determined as a group it's just not necessary to go that deep.
Okay, thank you.
Hopefully that helps, Rebecca.
Yes, very much so. Thank you.
Thank you, Brandon. Any other questions in the room? Going once, twice. Okay. I guess that's it then. Thank you, Brandon, for an excellent conversation.
I'll just close by saying thank you to everybody in the room for really affording the time to let us explore and expand on topics like this as we work to improve as an overall organization in the development of standards. It's not to say that this is the perfect process, right? This is just, it's a way for us to put something up on the board that has some miles on it that we know works, and achieves some of these milestones that we're setting out to accomplish. But please inform it, help us make it better. Give it a go and let us know how we can change it, especially for those new consensus bodies that we're putting together. And with that, I'll just say thank you so much for the blood, sweat, and tears that all of you volunteer. And please be patient, especially in harmonization. Please be patient with us as we learn better how to work through a more complex world of standards.
We made a lot of progress this week, a lot of passion this week. 500 is about 60 to 65% complete. I would say by June, we'll be compiled and consolidated in our final version of the draft. And I think the goal by late summer is to go to public review, right? And then shortly after that, 550 is going to be right on its heels. 550 will be right behind it. We are purposely staggering, so that way we can get the public review comments back on 500 and deal with some of the issues that may come back through 500, through that process, and deal with them in 550 ahead of time. So that way we are doing a logical progression forward on this. But I tell you what, sitting on those 500 calls, some of the smartest people that I've ever met, it's like putting on an old pair of jeans. I've been doing it a long time, and 500 for a long time, and I couldn't love those guys more. Chris and Brandon are a master class on chair and vice chair. Any of you newer consensus body chairs and vice chairs want to learn how to handle a committee? Sit in on a couple of 500 meetings. You'll get a master class on the taskmaster and the coordinator and editor working hand in hand together to get things done. I mean, those two guys are phenomenal, and you get a chance to see them. Thank them for the hard work they're doing, because that old dog, the 500, that old dog has learned some new tricks, and it's gonna be a great document. So 550, we're about the same, 60, 65%. We have more written, but we have to kind of wait to see how some of this other stuff pans out so we can edit and rework and follow 500 into the tunnel. So that's where we're at.
Wonderful. Thank you, Howie, for the double update on the 500 and the 550. Next up, we have the S900 professional remediation of, I'm just going to stick with illicit drugs because that's easier. And we have Chair Richard Driscoll, I think, in the room. We also have Vice Chair Paul Pritchard. Paul's going to give the update. Thank you, Paul.
So we finished our second public review, which is, it was a real surprise actually that how many comments we actually had come in. There was so little. So I'm either taking that as a really bad thing or a really good thing. I don't really know. I'm hoping it's a really good thing because it means that globally people want this standard and they seem to be very happy with the way it's been written. So let's hope that is the case. So we've submitted our foreword, our definitions, I think everything that Millie needs. And now it's going to go to being edited, I believe, and then maybe legal, and then of course it'll get approved by the board of directors. So it's very exciting. And along that way, this has been, 5 years? The consensus body has been working on it. And I think if you want a definition of consensus for the Global Harmonised Glossary, then you just need to say refer to the S900 CB, because I think consensus was something that was certainly evident through that whole 5 years. It's been a wonderful committee. I think that's about all I need to report on.
Thank you, Paul. That's fantastic. Next up, we have an update from the field guide for safety and health for professional restorers. The chair is Lee Center, vice chair is Jim Thompson, and today David Oakes is going, or Jim.
Yeah, I'm going to talk on it. I'm not trying to steal anybody's thunder, but Jim wasn't in the room when we finished up today, so I just want to bring you an update on this. But before we go on, I want to say there's been a consensus. That's the theme for today, hasn't it? Look at the 500 and the 550, how they're working together. We have the harmonized glossary, which is a consensus, so we're working towards being consistent there. Having said that, the field guide is actually trying to take a position to cover some of the stuff that we can't really do in standards, and that's safety. And I'm here to report that we've completed the final review of the standard, and it's headed to Millie as of today. So congratulations to that group and hard work they did on that.
Thank you, David. And with the field guide, that is an IICRC document, not a proposed American national standard. And so we will put it out for peer review as opposed to public review. It will be a closer review, but it will be made available to all of the consensus bodies at the very least. Thank you, David. And I just have a couple of other quick updates. These are the 3 standards that we recently published. The S400 that Perry showed us. 520 2024 edition, which was an update from the 2015 version, and then the first edition of the S700 fire standard. All of these standards have been published within the last few months, and all have been received very well. And then yesterday this slide was absolutely accurate, and today everything has changed in a good way. The 3 standards that are sort of finishing up public review are the 410 infection control, the 900 drug residues, and the 300 upholstery cleaning. But the 900 is essentially done. 410 has one more limited public review. Interestingly, it was one change, just one change, that's triggering this 3rd public review. So please don't comment on it. No, I'm kidding. And then the 300 is also inching towards publication. So all 3 of these standards should be published by this summer-ish. We've already received an update on all of these. I just want to make sure that I haven't missed anything. I think everything's covered, but here are the titles for all of the standards. If anyone is looking for information on any of our standards at any time, please go to the IICRC website. If we are accepting applications for a standard, that's where you'll find it. If a standard is in public review, that's where you'll find it. And you know, if you're interested in sort of just participating at any level as a consensus body member, as a non-voting volunteer, as a public review commenter, the IICRC website is the best place for information, and also for updates on where we are with each standard and sort of what's coming next. Interestingly, we do this exercise once a month with all the chairs and vice chairs of all consensus bodies. We call it the Standards Committee, and we do updates and sort of review any issues and concerns from all of our consensus bodies. So it kind of felt very much like that. But thank you to everyone for that. I want to say thank you especially to Brandon Burton, to Darren Foote, to David Oakes, and all of the consensus body members and leadership, and all of you who have joined and participated in the 2025 Standards Summit. We truly, truly appreciate your dedication to IICRC standards and look forward to continuing our work together. Thank you to all the staff who have worked tirelessly to make this event happen. For us, this is like a wedding. We work very hard to prepare for it. Most especially to Cheryl Smith, to Erica Harrison, to Holly Kimber, to Angelina Dixon, to Destiny, and all the other IICRC, GRC staff members who have worked super hard to plan and execute this 7th Annual Standards Summit. As a reminder, we would like to celebrate you. A big thank you to you for all that you do. And to help us do that, please join us tonight at the awards dinner at 6 p.m. at Chaos. It is in this hotel. Everyone is invited. Please don't miss this event. And now I would like to call on Joe Dobbins, IICRC Chairman of the Board, to just say a couple of words and close us out, please. Joe. Also on the screen you see the dates for the next Standard Summit, February 23rd and 24th. So mark your calendars. We'll send more information your way, of course.
Melanie, is that the one I was saying as well?
Yes, yes. So Standard Summit, February 23rd, 24th, AIM 25th. Joe.
Thank you, Millie. That was great, and so was your team. This has been a great couple of days, hasn't it? And we have accomplished a lot. It's amazing. And I keep looking, and they just keep saying, oh, yeah, we finished, we finished, we finished. That is great. So thank you to all of you people who do this. And because working on this stuff and putting it together is not easy. And then everybody wants to get in the ball game and give their 2 cents. And although that's real good, it's still kind of like, well, that's fine, you know. You know, we have a group that just works intermingling together in this organization from top to bottom throughout. And we have some great staff. We have great people here. And I just wanted to say thank you for coming here. Thank you for your dedication to this standards group, because people don't have the standards we have. They won't talk about what they think is the right thing to do. We're going to talk about what we all go through, and then we find, and then the reviews, and then all of that, and then we put out what is right.